Hello everyone, I'm Milo. Welcome to my town and to the final part of my Kirby 30th anniversary special video series. Last time, we checked the first modern Kirby titles that started as style with Return to Dreamland on the Wii, and after going through all of the other adventures Kirby has had in these past 30 years, we finally arrived to cover the final two titles, both released for the Nintendo Switch console. It's been a long journey, but we are here at last. I want to thank you if you've seen all the parts so far. I'll have a big speech about this entire project at the end, but for now, I hope you enjoy this last part. Without further ado, let's begin. This story begins in a remote area far away from Popstar, in an ancient base across the galaxy, where an ominous dark heart, known as the Jamba Heart, was encased, seemingly sealed by some protecting heart spears. A hooded priest approached the heart and started performing some sort of ritual to free it from its imprisonment. However, this did not seem to go according to plan, as the heart split up into many pieces that scattered across the galaxy once it had been let loose of its encasement. A lot of these Jamba Heart pieces fell upon planet Popstar, with many of its residents catching notice of the sudden rain of them. In particular, one fell upon the reconstructed castle DDD. The king just barely avoided it crashing onto him. However, a malevolent energy emanating from these hearts would take hold of those who came into contact with them. Kirby was taking a nap under a tree close by, when coming from the sky, a pink heart containing the heart spears that were keeping the Jamba Heart sealed fell upon Kirby, waking him up. He then noticed a fair amount of Waddle Dees taking food towards Castle DDT, and a dark cloud surrounding the skies above it. What could be the meaning of this? King DDD had already changed his ways. There's not a chance he would pull the same trick again. Kirby set out to Castle DDD to investigate. On his way there, Kirby was ambushed by a very hostile Poppy Bro. He had never seen them act like this. He started to panic to this aggressive reaction, but something resonated from within him, and by raising his hands, he materialized pure energy known as a friend heart. He threw it towards Poppy Bros, and suddenly, he got a change of heart. He stopped his rage and instead joined Kirby's side as a friend. This new ability must have come from the heart that came from above. Now Kirby was able to befriend enemies and use them to help on his cause, by providing power upgrades to his abilities and helping clear obstacles. Once Kirby had progressed towards the castle, he and his friends found a place called the Dream Palace. Inside, there was an artifact called the Dream Rod, which by using the power of the friend hearts, was able to summon an ally to aid Kirby's quest. Initially, using this rod, Kirby was able to call forth Bandana Waddle Dee, his animal friends from Lomback, Gooey, and even Marks, who had survived his past struggle and given up on world domination as long as he was well fed. Kirby and friends headed into the forest, only to find Wispy Woods, who they had encountered several times beforehand. However, this time a dark aura emanated from him. The team fought against him, and once his rage was quelled, Kirby thought to throw a friend heart at him. It seemed to have an effect, as Wispy rewarded them with many treats. A purple hat heart sprung out of him, which later floated up into the sky. Kirby and team continued forward and made it to Castle DDD. When they arrived at the throne room, King DDD was hoarding all the stolen fruit and having a treat. Upon seeing Kirby's team, he immediately went hostile and started attacking them. They could perceive an evil gaze from his eyes. Something wasn't right with him. After fighting for a while, the king erupted in a fit of rage so strong he became buffed up with massive muscles. This madness had to stop. Kirby and team continued fighting him until he dropped down and was stunned. Kirby threw a friend heart at him and he was befriended. The king had come back to his senses as the purple heart dropped out of him. The party celebrated, but was interrupted by the heart, as it suddenly began moving and left the scene. They now understood the effects of the hearts might have played to other areas of Popstar, and as such, they set out to other parts of the planet to cleanse it from this evil influence. Their heroic deeds made the rod within Dream Palaces to react, and made the call for extra friends to be able to join the team if needed. Adeline and Ribbon, coming back from when they adventured together in Ripple Star, Taroge and his Quick Squad, who were in for the possible treasure, and finally, Dark Meta Knight, summoned back from the dimensional mirror, It seems he was attracted by the power of the Jamba Hearts and was willing to put differences aside and momentarily aid Kirby on his quest. As they traveled to each of the corners of Popstar, they arrived at a place called the Sacred Square. As they approached the central plaza of the area, Meta Knight was waiting there. He seems to have been corrupted by the hearts as well, as the darkness granted him the power to create copies of itself. They fought and defeated the knight, and then befriended him again with a friend heart. Another purple heart floated into the sky, but before they could give chase, a giant fortress known as the Jump Bastion suddenly landed at the edge of Popstar. Why had they come, now of all times? Due to these events, once again the Dreamrod reacted and called for the assistance of another group of heroes, as they might prove useful to face the dangers ahead. Magalore, a former buddy turned into friend, could not let Dreamland fall on his watch. Taranza, trying to move on from his friend's passing and hoping to find a way to find her again. And Susie, now helping people in need with the power of her company. All were now available if Kirby called out for their help. With the added help of these dream friends, Kirby and team infiltrated the fortress to investigate its sudden landing. The Jump Bastion was huge, and at its main entrance the purple Jamba Heart pieces seemed to be gathering in. As Kirby and company approached it, it went up a stairway that was later closed by some guards. It was Pan and Con. Kirby had dealt with them back on the Dark Matter incident, but now they seemed to be controlled into guarding the entrance. Kirby and friends defeated them and befriended them with a friend heart. To thank for their release, they opened the door for the party to go through. They proceeded through the outer walls of the fortress and found one of the purple hearts, but a blue-dressed girl snagged it from their view suddenly. She introduced herself as Francisca, one of the 3 generals of magic. She explained that their goal was to recover the Jamba Heart pieces and assemble them to bring their twisted vision into fruition, and warned Kirby and his team to not interfere. They could not let this be, so they fought against her and her icy magic. They managed to defeat her. However, she was able to latch into the heart as it rose up and use it as an escape route. They continued to ascend the fortress and entered an inner sanctum near the top. Once they were deep inside, they got suddenly interrupted by a fiery voice. This was Flamberge, another of the generals, who was infuriated at Kirby for harming Francisca, while also carrying one of the heart pieces. Putting it aside, she swore to defeat Kirby in retaliation, but was defeated by the friend group. Using a similar technique to Francisca, she fled the scene with the floating heart. At last, they reached a hall on the top of the fortress, and ventured forth until they found some sort of throne room, where someone else had been waiting for them. The Lighting General, San Partisan. She had initially thought of Kirby and his party as a minor nuisance, but had now realized they were a threat to them, and swore on the will of their leader, Highness, Officer of Doom, to stop them right now. Kirby and company fought against her and came on top. Shocked at the fact that such a measly planet has such a major force to reckon with, she decided to stop the power core of the fortress and cause the self-destruction of the entire Jump Bastion in a last attempt at taking them down, before fleeing with a heart in hand. Kirby and friends hurried back the way they came. Using the power of the Friend Hearts, they created a Friend Star artifact, something similar to a Warp Star with attacking capabilities, and fled the crumbling fortress. The heroes now knew that evil intentions were being plotted surrounding the Jamba Hearts. They could not sit still knowing this. As such, they followed the dark energy readings and ventured farther into the galaxy, chasing planet after planet and reading others from these evil influences. As they ventured further into the cosmos, they could feel a stronger, darker influence. They re-encountered both Francisca and Flamberge in close-by moons to the planets they kept visiting, both surprised at their survival from the crumbling fortress. They fought against each and came out victorious, sending the mages drifting to space. They could not allow their evil plan to come to be. Finally, after traversing a major part of the galaxy, they arrived at the Jambandra base, the center of operations of the enemy. Infiltrating it, deep inside they found a shrine of sorts, referred to as the Divine Terminus. As they headed in, they spotted a hooded priest in front of an incomplete Jamba Heart, but little by little, its pieces were returning to it, slowly making it whole. This was clearly a bad sign. The group of friends quickly rushed towards it to try and stop them, but were interrupted by Sam Partisan. She as well was surprised they had survived the destruction of the Jam Bastion, and that they had defeated the other two generals, who she referred to as her sisters. However, she refused to have her Lord Highness be disturbed, as he had requested so while performing his ritual. She faced off against the heroes once again, giving it all her might, but the combined power of Kirby's friends broke through all her attempts. After being weakened, she called out to Highness and begged for help. Highness, hearing this in the back of the shrine, turned around at the distraction he had requested not to have. It seemed as if he was about to help her, but instead, he kicked her out of the way and directed towards Kirby. Highness mentioned how he had run out of heart pieces to restore his Dark Lord. For a moment, he suggested if they had to simply give up, before exploding in denial and explaining some of his backstory. He and his clan had been banished by the ancients who preferred technology over magic. This betrayal had hurt him deeply, and as such, he had spent the rest of his life blockading and attempting to awaken the Dark Lord talked about in the prophecies. They had been close, but the ritual failed as he didn't truly understand how to perform it. Now, at the attempt to cast it a second time, he kindly asked for any interference to disappear forever. He would not tolerate a distraction from these heroes and started attacking them. He had strong magic, but was clearly holding back. However, once the heroes caused his hood to be knocked off, he went in for real. Using his magic, he summoned the three mage sisters and harnessed their elemental powers for him to use. They were barely conscious, but he used every tool at his disposal to win. Kirby and friends were able to defeat them after a fierce battle. After being weakened, Highness walked slowly towards the ominous heart. "Perhaps a sacrifice will suffice," he said. The reason the three sisters were part of Highness's cult was because he had saved each of them from certain death to the elements he now possessed, and as thanks, followed in his steps and became their commanders. However, it seems his goal was of the utmost importance, and he was willing to sacrifice his own followers to achieve it. He threw them into the Jamba heart, and seeing it almost finalized, he said his final plea so that the Lord of Destruction, Void Termina, could be reborn. As he threw himself into the Jamba heart, it became whole once again. Dark energy started emanating from it as it rose up and out of the base. Kirby and friends had to give chase. They gathered energy to create a friend star, but the heart spheres that had scattered around the altar gathered around the star, creating the Star Ally Sparkler. With this new weapon in hand, the group followed the pulsating Jamba heart into an arena deep in space, where it finally finished materializing into the Destroyer of Worlds, Void Termina. This colossal monster was said to be the Dark Lord that could plunge the world into obscurity. They had to stop him. Using their new device, the friends shot at the weak spot that the beast would expose, while trying to avoid all the attacks it would summon against them. Once they had managed to drop his defenses, the foe fell onto the ground, revealing an entrance to its insides. The friends went inside their adversary to find the core of its being. They attacked towards it while avoiding its attempts at damaging them. While inside the belly of the beast, they could see that the three mage sisters and Highness weren't gone after all, but they lay unconscious in the insides of Void Termina. Once the core had sustained enough damage, it let loose a set of strands. The heroes pulled from them and tore apart the protective shell of the core, just before the body reacted and coughed them out of their insides. The Jam Bastion followers were ejected out alongside the Star Allies, who got back on their sparkler. Void Termina recovered and shifted form, growing a pair of wings and a tail, attacking them from above. They avoided his projectiles and attacked when possible. It really did show how much power this foe had, as at one point it even summoned a giant Master Crown, one very similar to the one that had driven Magolor to insanity in the past. Once the allies finally managed to bring the beast down for a second time, they returned to its insides. Once in there, the core of Void Termina finally showed its true self, an orb that oddly resembled Kirby. They looked like complete opposites, as it had the power of dark emotions, causing Kirby's friends to turn against him with his attacks. Kirby had to befriend them again using friend hearts, which managed to hurt Void Termina as well. After fighting for a while, the core changed into a terrifying familiar form, dark matter. Knowing that this being was completely composed of negative emotions, It was easy to assume that he was the primary source of dark matter in the universe. On top of that, if Kirby was its opposite, he was a being of pure positivity. They could not let evil triumph over good. They kept up the fight until the core started to glow vividly and caused them to eject out once more. The allies caught their sparkler one more time, as Void Termina's giant body completely disappeared as its core went out of it. Hungry to take out Kirby and his friends, he assumed his dark matter form and started to focus a powerful energy beam towards the heroes. In retaliation, the sparkler countered the beam with one of their own. They went back and forth while damaging Void Termina in the process, but he was not ready to give up. He unleashed all of his power, almost beating out the allies, but Kirby let out all of his positive energy as well to counterattack and stun him. At last, Kirby gathered the thoughts of all of his friends that had aided him in this journey and sent them towards Void Termina. He was going to make him learn what friendship was, one way or another. Void Termina could not contain so much of the energy that opposed his very being, and at long last, he exploded as it admitted defeat. The explosion of Void caused the entire arena to crumble down. Kirby, attempting to flee, fell unconscious in the vastness of space. However, his three companion friends managed to catch him and wake him up. All four heroes then noticed Popstar, the brightest star in the galaxy, shining across the distance. They rejoiced at having defeated their foe, and summoning a warp star, headed home to a peaceful time once again. After some time had passed, Kirby sensed something wrong in the Divine Terminus. He made his way over there and found a rift that led to another dimension, while sensing a familiar dark energy on the other side. Come to think of it, Kirby had not heard from the whereabouts of the Jambastion followers after Void had been terminated. This all seemed too fishy, so he went into the rift to get to the bottom of it. He traversed through countless dimensions while using the help of all his dream friends, collecting pink hearts in the process. He also encountered alternate versions of enemies he had fought previously, which when defeated, released a heart spear just like the ones who used to hold the Jamba heart together. Kirby took them with him in case they proved to be useful. After going through 4 different dimensions, a final portal opened up, and on the other side, they found a slightly different Divine Terminus to the one they knew. A full Jamba heart suddenly sprung from the middle of the arena. The collected heart spears clipped themselves into it, breaking it and revealing a corrupt highness inside. This highness began attacking the heroes just like before, but due to his corruption with dark energy, he had more powerful attacks up his sleeve. Halfway through their fight, as he lost his hood, he summoned 3 log pieces with clothes resembling the Mage Sisters, mimicking his earlier approach. The heroes managed to defeat him, and were quickly interrupted by a familiar voice, Sam Partisan. She explained how she saw Highness fall into a void leading to another dimension, and followed right after to save her master. But now, finding herself on the edge of reality, was too late to save him. She called for her sisters, and realized Highness was not quite who he used to be, but for the sake of the times where he led them to greatness, they would take revenge upon his name and defeat Kirby. The 3 sisters had been partly changed as well, and they launched their attack and rage towards Kirby, all at once. It was a fierce battle, but Kirby and his friends defeated them. They fell onto the ground, weakened by their fight. Suddenly, all the pink hearts Kirby had gathered throughout the dimensions gathered into a giant friend heart. Kirby threw it towards the sisters, and they recovered their original selves. They had been partly affected by the alternate dimensions, and blinded by their rage. But now that Kirby had saved them, they wanted to pay him back somehow. All 3 of them chanted a prayer that transformed the arena into a more peaceful setting, and summoned a War Star for Kirby and his friends. They clearly wanted a moment to leave their master to rest, so they sent Kirby and company off. From the War Star's trail, however, a small pink heart floated down, making his way into Highness, and cleansing the darkness from his heart. The sisters were glad their master was safe and sound, and gathered around him as they looked into the sunset. Before we continue, this is a spoiler warning. The next game is Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the latest game on the franchise that released just a month ago from this video's making. If you want to experience this game and the story for yourself, then you can skip ahead to the timestamp shown. There is a shortcut to it in the description. I will be discussing spoilers for the entirety of the game, so this is your final warning to skip ahead. Kirby was taking a stroll through Dreamland. It seemed like the average peaceful day. His warp star arrived on the spot and he boarded it to go for a trip through the air. But things were about to take a dark turn. As he headed through the fields, the sky suddenly began to be shrouded in dark clouds. Then out of nowhere, several rifts started to open up in the sky. They resembled some Kirby had seen in the past, like the ones from Magolor's ship. These, however, started sucking in the land below. Waddle Dees and other Dreamland residents began to rise up and get absorbed inside these dark vortexes. Kirby tried to use his warp star to get close and see what was the deal with them. Bandana Waddle Dee, who was outside, also attempted to move amidst the tempest, but he was overwhelmed by the force and sucked in. Kirby traversed through the land, but he crashed into a palm tree that had been lifted from the ground, and lost his balance as both he and the warp star were sucked into a vortex in the sky. As Kirby was being transported elsewhere, his body began to warp around and expand in a weird way, something he had never experienced before. At some point, Kirby came back to his senses, stranded on a beach. Who knows how much time he had been there, but he started exploring this new world he found himself in. He proceeded through a lush area close to the beach, until he found himself in what appeared to be the remains of a city, one that had likely been abandoned for a while, as vegetation had grown on all of the buildings. Kirby noticed a couple of Dreamland's usual enemies that had made their way here. He eventually arrived at some abandoned building, and upon entering, he spotted some animal creatures called awufis, laying on top of a car. When they spotted Kirby, they rushed towards him. Out of instinct, Kirby started inhaling them to protect himself. But as he kept his attack up, the car on the back got caught up and was hurled towards Kirby. Normally, Kirby wouldn't be able to fit such a big object of his mouth, but he felt inside he might be able to somehow gulp it down. The car got partway into his mouth and Kirby started to get the remaining part in. But once he was done, instead of simply eating it or copying an ability, Kirby's own body got morphs to surround the car. It would appear whatever the vortex did to Kirby made it possible for him to get hold of some objects from this world in this new mouthful mode. It wasn't a traditional copy ability, but Kirby was able to control the car his body now surrounded. He kept moving, and as he knocked down a bridge to go through, a radio activated and started playing a song from this land. He listened to it as he started to take in this new and strange world he had found his way into. After the road was over, he abandoned the car and kept moving on his own, eventually arriving at an area showing destroyed buildings, a recent attack. Suddenly, he noticed some awufis chasing down and capturing some Waddle Dees, the very same residents of Dreamland. Alongside them, there was a blue creature also being chased that got captured by them. Before they could leap, Kirby fought against them and managed to free this fellow guy. His name was Elflin, and he also wanted to help out the Waddle Dees. He explained how a group named the Beastpack started capturing the Waddle Dees after they had destroyed the town they had built for themselves. Kirby, wanting to help his own friends, teamed up with Elflin as they jumped on a warp star and set out to rescue the kidnapped Waddle Dees. They started looking in the area surrounding the town ruins, a former city now overrun by nature. As they managed to rescue Waddle Dees trapped through the buildings, and even some being guarded by a gorilla named Gorimondo, the town started to be rebuilt, with many establishments for the townsfolk and even a recreation of Kirby's own house. If they were going to be here for a while, they might as well make the most out of it. Bandana Waddle Dee was also around, and he was willing to aid Kirby on the rescue mission if help was needed. They kept moving through the land into a coastal area, which has some abandoned piers, dams, and even water storing facilities. Kirby started to notice that some of the enemies he was used to in Dreamland had ended up here, but they had teamed up with the Beastpack for some reason. Moving onwards, Kirby and Elflin arrive at the remains of a big amusement park named Wondaria. As they rescued more captured Waddle Dees, they got to a big top stage, where another member of the Beastpack, Clarolyn, was waiting to put a stop to them. Kirby defeated her and returned to Waddle Dee Town. Massive changes had gone on. As the townfolk had expanded more of the town's area, they built a coliseum for entertainment. Then, a very unexpected visitor arrived. It was Meta Knight. It seems he had also ended up stranded in this world, and wanting to ever improve himself, he decided to challenge Kirby to a coliseum bout. The two of them had their duel as a way for both to improve their combat skills. Meta Knight then remained in town to protect it against the Beastpack, while Kirby was not around. Going back to their quest, Kirby and Elflin arrive at the edge of the continent, a snowy area that held the frozen remains of a town. After venturing through the Blizzard Bridge and facing a bunch of Beastpack members, they arrived at some old cathedral. They could hear the screams of more captured Waddle Dees as they ventured inside. But what Kirby found, he could not believe his eyes. His own friend, King Dedede, was engaging some Waddle Dees himself. He had a different tone on his face, and it seems he was on the side of the Beastpack. The king did not hesitate to go towards Kirby with hostile intentions as soon as he noticed his arrival. Confused and flustered, Kirby had to face off against the king, who used his trademark hammer. Halfway through their fight, however, he discarded it and picked up the fallen pillar found in the arena's vicinity. He was not holding any punches as he aimed towards Kirby, but our hero managed to outbest him and in the end caused Dedede to faint. As the encaged Waddle Dees were released and Kirby and Elflin were celebrating, King Dedede woke up, and in an instant, without them noticing, he prepared a cage and trapped Elflin. Before Kirby could do anything, he summoned a bird flock to carry him away. Kirby called a warp star and saw their destination expanded far away from the arrival continent, as Dedede had gone to the Forbidden Island. Arriving to this new landmass, Kirby found himself in a dry area. The remains of cities and former ports were now overrun by a sandy, deserted wasteland. Kirby ventured forward while saving more Waddle Dees, eventually finding himself in a cave near a canyon. He could hear someone clamoring for help inside, and as he went to their rescue, he found Elflin. Happy about the discovery, he approached his cage to try and free him. But it was a ruse. It was just a handmade model that resembled Elflin, and its owner was another official of the Beastpack. Silly Dillo. Kirby had to face off against him before moving on, as the path was at last revealed to a volcanic area named Redgar. Signs of the Beastpack could be seen all over. This was most definitely their base of operations. As Kirby went closer to the base of the volcano, he first encountered all of the officials he had battled beforehand, and further after passing through them, he found a mechanical base that went deep into the volcanic ground. After getting through some of their forces, he saw in the distance a familiar silhouette. It appears King Dedede was guarding some sort of entrance. Kirby still wanted to find out why he was doing all of this, but as he approached his location, he noticed he was struggling with something. Eventually, he turned, revealing a mask that was controlling him, while also making him go into a frenzy. Kirby faced off against this new masked Dedede until he was able to calm him down. After rescuing some Waddle Dees being kept there, they all gathered to try to get King Dedede back up. The color of his eyes was now the one Kirby remembered. The poor king had once again been under some control, and had been put alongside the Beastpack to carry out their orders. This reunion was interrupted when large numbers of Beastpack members started rushing towards them. Kirby noticed an elevator that opened in the back, and they all ran towards it to escape. However, one of the Waddle Dees tripped. They would catch him for sure. Dedede noticed one of his fellow men had fallen, and he went back for him. But noticing the imminent arrival of the beast, he knew what he had to do. He drew his Waddle Dee towards the others and prepared his hammer to face the pack on his own. Kirby and the Waddle Dees were now in the elevator. As it activated and started to move, a voice could be heard by them, welcoming them to Lab Discovera. This voice began to tell them about the Dream Discovery Tour, in which they were to meet the ultimate lifeform, known as the codename IDF-86. This was an invasive entity that one day arrived to this world due to its special teleportation capabilities, and started ravaging and destroying the land. Thankfully, the research team at the lab had managed to capture it. They then began experimenting on it and developed planetary warping technologies derivating from the power of this being. However, some 30 years after these studies began, an incident occurred when a new life form emerged from within IDF-86 and escaped the facility. The creature, being incomplete, remained inactive in an eternal capsule made for it, and continued to be kept at the top level of the lab. Kirby then could see now where the captured waddles were being taken to. They were being used as lab rats to run and generate power. Poor little dudes. As the boys announced their arrival to the containment room, Kirby entered and saw a creature sleeping inside laboratory equipment, with a lion character sitting in the room beforehand. His name was Leon Gar, the leader of the Beast Pack. He explained to Kirby how the Great One who lay behind him had granted the people of that world the power that took them to a land of dreams, and that they were hoping to be granted just the same after they could bring it back to its complete form. As it turned out, Elflin was the missing half. They were hoping to finally reunite them, and for it, Leon Gar started battling against Kirby, so he could stop interfering with their business. Kirby fought Leon Gar. The leader of the Beast Pack had his role deserved, as he was a mighty opponent, but when Kirby started to show the upper hand, he suddenly became enraged and his eyes turned purple. Kirby continued to fight, and eventually hit him with a strong blow that launched him towards the room that contained the creature. As Elflin's containment was broken, the two friends were finally reunited. But Leon Gar suddenly woke back up, and as he started talking, it was clear it was not himself. He spoke out how this was an important plan involving locating a workforce and opening a vortex to bring it here, but a mistake had happened and a pink contaminant had been brought as well. They clearly meant Waddle-Dees and Kirby. Finally, the creature in the back awoke at last. His name was Vecto Forgo, and he had run out of patience and instead chose to attack head-on. As he broke free from his encasement, he seemed to use telepathy to control members of the Beast Pack who all came to corner Kirby, but Vecto Forgo instead began assimilating all of them, including Leon Gar, forming a gross amalgamation of all of the beasts that launched towards Kirby and Elflin. They both ran towards a hallway in the side, but were eventually cut off by Vecto Forgo, who launched its viscous arms and managed to get a hold of Elflin, absorbing him deep inside the being. It started glowing on the inside as it rose up into the very top of the laboratory. Kirby followed them to the top of the building. He arrived at the side of the orb of Vecto Forgo, reclaiming its original power and awakening once again the complete ultimate lifeform, Vecto Elfilis. He was an invasive conqueror from somewhere in space, and after he was captured in this land, Elflin was born from a compassionate soul from within his being, but after their separation, the incomplete form could only manifest itself within the realm of its own dreams. Due to his powerful psychic powers, he was eventually able to control the animals of the land, including Leon Gar, who formed the Beast Pack and started doing the bidding of Elflis. King Dedede and other Dreamland residents had been controlled just like this upon their arrival, and that's how they ended up aiding the Beast Pack. Now that Elflis was whole once again, only Kirby stood in the way of his ambitions, and as such, he aimed to take him down. Elflis was no pushover. First using his mighty spear to attack Kirby, he eventually controlled the space surrounding the city sky as he used his powers and summoned portals, bringing galactic debris to try to take Kirby down. The pink hero was able to withstand his attacks, and after being heavily weakened, Elflin emerged from his body trapped in a bubble. Kirby went mouthful as he used his body to wiggle him out and break him free. Kirby celebrated Elflin's return, but they both trembled to see Elflis still standing, even after removing one half of his being. He still had enough power to keep his original form, but as his body started to melt away, he decided to act, as he rose high into the sky and opened up a big rift. As buildings and vehicles started raising up due to the gravity change, Kirby trembled when he saw his very home, planet Popstar, as it was being pulled in to crash into this world. They had to stop Elflis somehow. They needed to reach him and defeat him for good to stop this madness. And like Destiny, a big rig truck landed near them. It was clear what they had to do. With a big effort, Kirby went for a final mouthful by feeding the entire truck into his mouth, and rushing forward to the skyscrapers that were lifting up into the air. As he saw pieces of dreamland crashing into this land, they had to stop Elflis before it was too late. They managed to reach the edge of the road and made a big leap to reach Elflis, who, seeing their approach, summoned rifts to bring forth debris and stop their advance. But Elflin used the power that existed inside of him to give them a final push of energy and raid to the obstacle. Finally, with Elflis using his powers to protect against their advance, he held on, but ultimately Kirby and Elflin rammed through his body and eliminated him. Kirby passed out for a while, but when he came to, he was back in Dreamland. Unfortunately, the big rift in the sky was still open and stuff was getting sucked towards it all around. Elflin was decided to use the power within him to close the connection between both worlds, even if it took all of his energy. As he went inside the portal, he thanked Kirby for the time they spent together. As tears came to his face, the rifts finally closed, and calm returned to Dreamland. They had averted their world's destruction, but Kirby felt saddened for the sudden departure of his new friend. However, it did not last, for another rift opened up near them. It was Elflin again. It seems his reunion with his former self now gave him the ability to create a connection between Dreamland and his world. Kirby returned to Waddle Dee Town, where the Beast Pack, now free of Elflis's control, were able to apologize for all the trouble caused and became friends instead. Elflin explained to Kirby how after closing the connection between worlds, he felt lost in an unknown realm, but Chlorolyn found him and cared for him until he recovered. He wanted to make it up for her, so they went to see her on the observation tower of the town, as she seemed worried about something. They found it odd that Leongar was nowhere to be seen. She explained how they both used to rule the animal kingdom, with their real names being Leon and Carol. But one day, Leon found Fecto Forgo and started talking in a weird language. She only spoke in meows, so she wasn't able to understand him. But wanting to remain at his side, as he founded the Beast Pack, they both took new names and she followed his orders, but wasn't sure what he was doing all he was. She was clearly worried about Leon, and it seems she could sense him through a new mysterious vortex that had appeared on top of the tower. When they approached it, it suddenly burst open and sought Kirby and Elflin in. When they came to the other side, Elflin described it as the place he felt when he was absorbed by Fecto Elfilis. This realm was called Forgo Dreams. It appears as if after Elfilis' body was defeated, his powerful mind was able to retreat here, to the very realm of his dreams, and he had likely taken Leon alongside him, as his powerful might could serve him of some purpose. Kirby and Elflin began exploring this strange world, only to find altered versions of the places they had visited before, as well as phantom versions of the Beast Pack members. These beings seem to have been a remnant of the minds of the originals as they were taken over by Elflis, and now remained in the ethereal realm. As they made their way through this domain, they also seemed to locate pieces of Leon's soul. For some reason, they had separated from their owner. They made sure to collect them on their way until they reacted in the direction of their owner, leading them into a dreamy version of Lab Discoverer. They went in and found Leon's body resting upon a bubble. Elflin, using his power, sent the soul fragments towards the body, which brought life back to him. They had found him. Soon they could all return to town and live peacefully. Kirby and Elflin did a celebration dance, to which Leon joined in the end. But suddenly, his head started hurting, and in an instant, just as before, he appeared to be possessed under some influence. Kirby had no option but to fight against him, eventually revealing that a phantom form of Fecto Forgo was inside of him, controlling his reckless moves. Kirby continued to fight against this powerful force. Fecto Forgo's influence was clearly showing, but Kirby hit them enough to knock Leon back down onto his chair. The creature within came out, and having recovered enough energy, Soul Forgo was about to get rid of the pests. But a peculiar butterfly interrupted him. As it showed up and landed on his head, the unthinkable happened. The butterfly fully absorbed Forgo's being and then reformed into a mighty warrior, Morpho Knight. This was a hostile party. Kirby had to fight against him, while having his own arsenal of attacks. Morphonite was able to summon a phantom version of Vecto Forgo to go against Kirby. It seems his core was still within the swordsman. After a fierce battle, Kirby was able to defeat this foe. As he started to dissipate into the air, for a second, something appeared to come out of it. With all threats gone, Kirby and Elflin hurried back to Leon, but he wasn't moving. The pair worried. Did they go too hard on them? But a sign of relief came to them as the entire beast pack arrived to the place, each carrying other fragments of his soul. They all raised their hands and pointed them towards Leon, who, after gathering all of them in his body, finally moved and stood up again. Carol rushed to hug him as he had his real friend again, and the entire pack rejoiced to see their leader safely back. They all padded back in town. It seems as if full peace was finally back in this land. But a final struggle awaited, as within the Colosseum, a strange rift had opened up, and it lured Kirby and Elflin to go to the other side. They appeared to find their way again into the Forgo dreams. The sky looked dark, as if under the influence of a powerful force. The top of the lab was a arena once more, as what they saw before got confirmed in front of their very eyes. From above, a reformed being floated down and revealed itself as Chaos Elfilis, a being formed from the chaos of the many souls it had absorbed before, the beasts, the butterfly, and the former Elfilis. This being was fueled by pure hatred of his past defeats and craved only for revenge. Kirby fought against this powerful entity who had even stronger abilities than his original self. He did not hesitate to summon spatial rifts to bring Kirby down. Eventually he was weakened, and an orb started procuring out of its back. Kirby went mouthful once again and extracted it. The orb, finally out, held the light that gave life to its owner. It melted the body and converted it into orbs that surrounded it. No longer capable of thinking, its only goal was to destroy everything in its sight. Kirby carefully evaded these orbs' attacks and retaliated back, until its life force could hold no more. As it began shrinking down, the many souls that lead to the creation of this being could be seen, only until a sliver of light remained from it. Accepting the defeat, the remaining energy from Elfilis' being willingly returned to Elflin, joining both of the halves back into one. The sky above then cleared up. The nightmare was finally over, with every and all threats removed from this mysterious forgotten land. Kirby, Elflin, the Beast Pack, and the other Dreamland residents could finally rest from this crazy adventure they had all been a part of. And this concludes the Kirby's 30th anniversary special video series, Kirby's Friends and Foes Throughout the Years. I'm gonna make this outro out of script, which isn't usually how I do it, but I do feel like it feels a bit more natural to do it this way. I do have some bullet points to discuss, so first than nothing, I really do want to thank you for watching this, if you finished this part, and hopefully the previous parts as well. I just got done finishing this part of the video. I had the day free, so I did the entire thing from start to finish. I don't usually do it like that. All of the previous parts were made during the course of a week, so a couple of hours each day editing. But this one I just did the entire thing in one day. This video was a bit more interesting and fun to make actually, because I recorded all of the footage that you saw in the video on my own. I don't have a capture card, but since these are games on the Switch, I was able to use the recording function of the console to record 30-second clips at most, so I did have to keep chaining them together when there were longer segments that I wanted to record. But I am proud of how it worked out, how it ended up, because I had exact control of what I wanted to show and what I needed to show, so I just recorded what I needed. I do hope you enjoyed it as well as much I spent making it. So let's talk about a bit the series as a whole. As I mentioned in the first part, this took a long time to make overall. The concept started in January, when I was thinking what I wanted to make for the 30th anniversary, since I had made videos for the 20th and 25th, so I for sure was going to be something. After thinking for a while, I came to this topic, and it stayed there for a couple of weeks until I started to actually focus on making it sometime in February. So what I did to prepare for it was I actually did play a lot of games, actually like 10 games from the series, some of the oldest ones, mainly because I had never played them. So I got that out of the way and got a bit into the mood for the anniversary. But additionally, because I wanted like the best research I could for making this video, so playing them was the best I could. I did and use some other sources to improve my knowledge, so the Kirby wiki, making the shoutouts here, Kirby, which is a different wiki, and also Meteor C on YouTube with his What is Kirby Canon series. They really helped me have a broader understanding and even get some other facts that are not explicit in the games. So, well, that was pretty much my research process. As I was playing through the games, then I also began to write the script for it. The script is basically what you saw in the video, so the stories of each. That took a while to write everything. I mean, I'm looking at my Google document right now and the entire thing is 45 pages. It grew over time, even after I was already making the videos because some changes went on. After the script was done, then began the voiceover recordings. And this was a bit hard because I'm not really used to talking as much as I needed to talk for making these videos. So my throat would get tired and I couldn't record for too long because the recordings would just be not so good to listen to. I could feel it and I could hear it. So I also only recorded mainly on Sunday mornings where there was not much external sound. It was a bit situational, so it did help me because I had to rest my voice as well. So it worked out. I think I did manage to start at a good time making them to work everything out. After I had all of the audio or the voiceovers for a part, I would start the editing of the video. And what I mentioned in the first part, that I thought the editing process would take longer than I thought, that was because it had been a while since I had edited a project this big. Most of the video work that I had done in the past couple of years, I guess, was very minor, where it was mainly just recording my screen or something and do light edits for the audio, and that was it. So editing for this video was something that I hadn't done for a while. It was a higher scale, so it took me like that first video while I made it to get into the mood, to nail it again. And I think after I made the first one, I was already comfortable and I had already remembered how to optimize going through them, so the next parts were more fluid to complete overall. That's basically the editing process. As I said, I roughly made one video per week, usually over a week. When Forgotten Land released, I did halt because I was going to play the game, of course, and I needed to pay attention to then write my script for that game, the one that you just heard basically. So it stopped meanwhile I was playing it, and then, well, I returned to making it. And then we arrived at today, that I'm finally finishing the last part. It's about 2 weeks until this one goes live, but I did want to make it in time to make sure that nothing went wrong. I think the videos ended up being more polished with the time. As I was making them, I started to see, okay, how to make this better, how to make this more consistent. And I think the quality improved. Of course, the public hasn't really get to see them in between my making them, but internally the way that I made them, I do believe it improved. So please comment below if you did notice that as well, so I can really know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that was the series. As I said, in the end it was talking mainly about the main plots of the games, while making the emphasis on who are Kirby's friends and who are Kirby's foes during each of them. I guess this can be taken like as a introductory to each of the games, so if they get shared around like that, well, that would be really cool. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss. So once again, really thank you for watching. Thanks to the wikis, Kirby Wiki with Kirby, and Meteor C on YouTube for proving as research sources. I hope you enjoyed truly. You can check the info card for a playlist that contains all the videos, including the ones that I made 5 and 10 years ago, as well as all of the parts of this one. If you are interested, I have some future projects related to Kirby as well. I have some stuff for the Forgotten Land that I want to make. It's gonna be really exciting. I'm hoping to get a capture card so it turns out better than the recording for this video. And some other Kirby stuff, as well as non-Kirby stuff. If you are interested, I will likely cover different types of video games that I enjoy here, so if you want to subscribe to check those out, that'd be really cool. I am trying to build a community here after all, so I can really appreciate the support. Anyway, I think that was it, so once again, thank you so much for watching. I am Milo, and this has been the Kirby Special Video Series. Don't forget, you'll always be welcome in my town. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.